You see other people doing the thing you want to do, building the business, creating the content, making the career move, living the life. And you think, good for them. That's great. I'm happy for them. But somewhere underneath that, there's another thought, quieter one you don't want to say out loud. They can do it, but I can't. And you don't know why. You just know it feels true. Like there's something that they have that you don't, right? Something that makes it possible for them, but not for you. And the worst part is you can't even explain it because logically, you know it doesn't make sense. You know you're capable. You know you have the skills. You know you could figure it out if you really tried, but you still don't believe it. Not really. So let's talk about why that is. Because this belief, this gap between they can do it and I can't, is one of the biggest things keeping you stuck. And it's not based in reality. It's based on a story you've been telling yourself for so long that it feels like the truth. So the first reason you think other people can, but you can't, is because you're comparing their middle to your beginning. You see someone who's already built the thing, already figured it out, already made it work, and you compare that to where you are right now, which is nowhere. Or at least that's how it feels. So, of course, it seems impossible. Of course, it seems like they have something that you don't because you're looking at the end result, not the messy, uncertain, uncomfortable process they went through to get there. You're not seeing the version of them that didn't know what they were doing, the version that was scared, the version that failed and had to start over, the version that felt exactly the way you feel right now. You're only seeing the polished version, the one that looks confident and capable and like they've always had it figured out. And because you're comparing that to your starting point, you think there's a gap. You think they're different somehow. You think they're special, but they're not. They just started before you did, and they kept going even when it didn't feel possible. And the second reason you think other people can, but you can't, is because you're making them the exception and yourself the rule. This is the mental trick your brain plays on you. When you see someone else succeed, you explain it away. You tell yourself they got lucky, or they had help, or they're naturally gifted, or they have some advantage you don't have. But when you look at yourself, you don't give yourself that same flexibility. You don't think maybe I could get lucky too. Maybe I could get help. Maybe I have advantages I'm not seeing yet. Instead, you think it's just me. I'm average. I'm not special, so it's not going to work for me. You make their success about external factors, but you make your potential failure about who you are. And that's the trap. Because as long as you're doing that, you'll always find a reason why it's possible for them, but not for you. They had the connections, you don't. They had the money, you don't. They had time, and you don't. They had confidence, and you don't. But here's the truth. Most of the people you're looking at didn't have those things either. They just started anyway, and they figured it out along the way. You're giving them credit for things that they didn't even have, and you're withholding credit from yourself for things you do have. And the third reason you think other people can do it, but you can't, is because you've internalized past failures as proof. At some point, you tried something and it didn't work. Maybe you started a project and didn't finish it. Maybe you put yourself out there and got rejected. Maybe you worked hard on something and it flopped. And instead of seeing that as one data point, you turned it into a conclusion about yourself. You decided this didn't work, so I'm not the kind of person who can make things work. And now, every time you see someone else succeed, it reinforces that belief because they're doing the thing you couldn't do, which means they're different, which means you were right about yourself. But that's not what happened. What happened is you tried something and it didn't work out the way you wanted. That's it. That's all it means. It doesn't mean you're incapable. It doesn't mean you're not cut out for it. It doesn't mean other people have something that you simply don't. It just means you tried something and it didn't work. And the only way to make that mean something bigger is to decide it does. But you don't have to decide that. You can decide it means something else. Like, I tried something and it didn't work. So now I know more than I did before. And I can try again with that knowledge. That's the difference between people who keep going and people who stay consistently stuck. It's not talent, it's not luck, it's how they interpret what happened. And the fourth reason you think other people can do it, but you can't, is because you don't see yourself as the kind of person who does that. And this goes back to identity. You have a picture in your head of who you are. And when you look at the thing you want to do, it doesn't fit that picture. So you think, that's not me. I'm not that kind of person. Maybe you see yourself as someone who plays it safe. So the idea of taking a risk, well, it feels wrong. It feels like you'd be pretending to be someone you're not. Or maybe you see yourself as someone who stays in the background. So the idea of putting yourself out there feels uncomfortable. It feels exposing. It feels like you're breaking some unspoken rule about who you're allowed to be. And because it doesn't match your identity, you look at other people doing it and think they can do it because that's who they are. But it's not who I am, so I can't. But here's the thing, identity isn't fixed. You're not locked into being one kind of person forever. The version of you that exists right now is just the version that's been shaped by the choices you've made so far. But you can make different choices. And when you do, you become a different version of yourself. The person who builds the business isn't a different species. They're just someone who decided to become the kind of person who builds businesses. And they did that by building a business, not by waiting until they felt like the kind of person who does that first. You don't become the person first and then do the thing. You do the thing. And that's what makes you the person. And the fifth reason that you think other people can do it, but you can't, is because you're looking and waiting for permission. You're waiting for someone to tell you that you're allowed to try, that you're qualified, that you're actually ready, that it makes sense for you. But no one's going to tell you that because no one's thinking about your life as much as you are. And even if they did, they don't know what you're capable of. Only you know that. Or at least you would know that if you tested it. But you're not testing it. You're waiting and you're waiting. You're watching other people do it. And every time you see them succeed, it reinforces the idea that they're somehow different, that they didn't need permission, that they just knew they could do it. But that's not true either. They didn't know. They just decided to try anyway. And here's the hard truth. No one's going to give you permission, not because you don't deserve it, but because permission isn't something someone else can give you in the world of these kind of things. And as long as you're waiting for someone else to tell you it's okay, you're going to keep thinking other people can do it, but you can't because they're not waiting. They're just doing it. So, what do you do about this? How do you actually close the gap between they can do it and I can do it too? So, the first thing you need to do is stop comparing their highlight reel to your behind the scenes. When you see someone who's already succeeded, remind yourself that you're not seeing the full picture. You're seeing the result, not the process, not the failures, not the uncertainty. And if you're going to compare yourself to anyone, compare yourself to the version of them that was where you are now, the version that didn't know what they were doing, the version that was scared, the version that wasn't sure that this was actually going to work. That's the version you're actually competing with, not the polished, confident version you see now. And the second thing you need to do is stop explaining away other people's success. When you see someone succeed, don't tell yourself they got lucky. Don't tell yourself they had advantages that you don't have. Don't tell yourself that they're somehow different. Instead, ask yourself, what did they do that I could do too? What choices did they make that I could actually make? What risk did they take that I'm avoiding? Because chances are the gap between you and them isn't as big as you think. It's just that they took the first step and you haven't. The third thing you need to do is reframe past failures. Stop treating your past failures as evidence that you can never do it. Start treating them as evidence that you tried. And trying is the first step. Every failure is just information and data. It doesn't tell you, all it does is tell you what doesn't work. And that's useful because now you know more than you did before and you can adjust. The people who succeed aren't the people who never fail. They're the people who fail and keep going anyway. The fourth thing you need to do is to start acting like the person you want to become. You don't have to feel like that person yet. You don't have to believe that you're the person yet. You just have to act like them. If you want to be someone who builds things, start building. Even if it's small, even if it's messy, and it will be, even if you don't feel ready, because the because doing the thing is what changes your identity, not the other way around. And the fifth thing you need to do is give yourself permission. Stop waiting for someone else out there to tell you it's okay. Stop waiting for proof that you're ready. Stop waiting to feel confident. Just decide. Decide that you're allowed to try. Decide that you're allowed to fail. Decide that you're allowed to become someone new because you are. You have always been. You've just been waiting for someone else to say it first. And here's what I want you to think about. What's one thing you've been watching other people do and thinking they can do it, but I can't? And then ask yourself, what's actually stopping me? Is it a real obstacle? Or is it just a story I've been telling myself? Because most of the time, the only thing stopping you is the belief that you're somehow different, that it's possible for them, but not for you. But that's not true. It's possible for you too. You just have to decide to try. If this resonates with you, head over to natehooks.com. Link is in the description below. There you'll find links to a free community I've created called Beyond Overthinking. And if you want to work with me personally, one-on-one, I've got a few options there as well. Either way, thanks for watching. And remember, the gap between them and you isn't as big as you think. You're just comparing their finish line to your starting point, and that's not a fair comparison.